welcome to the award-winning podcast, Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews. I want to welcome Tracey Phillips today. I'm going to give you a short background on Tracey, who is an excellent writer. Tracey considers herself a serial artist who is an avid gardener, musician, piano teacher, artist, and author, as if, I don't know how she fits that in the day. She writes psychological suspense and romantic suspense. Her debut, Best Kept Secrets, which is wonderful, won a Hugh Holton Award in 2018. She is a two-time finalist for the Claymore Award for Best Unpublished Novel. Her short story, Forbiddance, was a finalist for Writer's Digest Genre Fiction Awards. And in 2020, as if all that weren't enough, in 2020, she created Blackbird Writers, a wonderful community of like-minded mystery authors. And like some of her characters, she occasionally, I love this, speaks with spirits on the other side. Her amazing book, Forewarned, is one I couldn't put down. I went right through it, couldn't stop. And I just want to give you a brief description, enough to kind of pull you in a little bit, and then you can go pick it up for yourself. So for 15-year-old Daphne Ann Post, the summer of 1976 at Lake Carlson should be filled with new friendships and carefree late-night parties. But something darker lurks beneath the surface. Her chilling premonition that someone is going to drown. I can attest, again, that this is hard to put down. So it's an excellent book. That's all the teaser I'm going to give you. And I want to ask Tracey some questions so she can tell us more about her excellent book. So my first question is, Tracey, where do you come up with ideas for your characters? They feel familiar to me, like everybody you kind of knew in high school, but then they surprise me as I turn the pages, which is like the best combination.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Amanda, for interviewing me today. I'm so happy to be here. So my characters, I don't feel like I create them. I feel like they come to me. Like, I might be thinking of an idea for a novel or whatever, but it's the character that drives that novel. And then, then one day, it'll be Daphne in the back of my head going, "Hello, you've got to write this story about me. Hello." And so then, I'm like, "Oh, wait, I'm interested. This story sounds interesting." And then, I have to get to know those characters before I can even begin writing. I'm kind of a pantser, so I might have an idea for how the book will end, and a pretty good idea of an arc, like a character arc and a plot arc. So the first thing that I have to do is get to know that character. So I'll start taking notes. I love to use the positive and negative trait thesauruses.
Oh yeah, those are great.
Yeah, they're so good. And then I can get an idea of maybe her weaknesses and her strengths. So I'll list all of these things, and I'll do this for most of the major characters so that I have a really good idea of their personality traits and where they might clash.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds like in terms of your tension and maybe even the plot as a whole, you're starting with character first. And that
Absolutely.
kind of leads into another question I have. So I think I've said to you before, I feel like you frequently have coming of age themes, which I really like. And they, can really kind of fill out a thriller and give you more interest to a thriller. So how do you make young people's, okay, because it's been a minute since I've been a teenager, just like a little.
It's been longer for me.
So, but yet I'm fully invested in their concerns, what they feel insecure about, what they feel resentful about. I'm with them. And I think that's kind of a hard thing to do. So, do you borrow from your own life or from teenagers you've known, like your friends when they were younger? Are you pulling from that experience you had when we were all felt a little gangly and weird? How do you come up with that?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I was the gangly and weird kid in high school. I was always like, or never one of the popular kids. I had my small group of friends and, we did art or we did, um, I don't know. We were not into sports. We were not into, a lot of the things that the popular kids did. So, I was that weird kind of, you know, outcast. And so yeah, I guess I draw on that. I draw a lot on that for Daphne. But I also gave her really good reasons for not feeling like she fit in because
Absolutely.
something
Yeah.
happens to her it's before the book, and I'm not going to give anything away by saying that, she has a premonition with a friend of hers, and she warns her, "Don't go out on the ice. I know you're going to get hurt." And her friend's like, I'm fine. I'm going ice skating. What are you talking about?" And she gets hurt really bad.
Mhm.
So then this friend, labels her as a freak. She kind of blames her for what happened. And then, this goes around the school. She spreads all these rumors about Daphne. And so then she really doesn't forget in. She kind of fit in. She kind of turns all of her friends against her.
Yeah, and I think that's a really compelling and very well woven through the novel, kind of where Daphne's coming from, and you feel for her. And so, yeah, as her kind of her origin, like superhero origin story, you
Yeah,
get kind of the feeling like it didn't just happen. It's not just a thing. It shaped her life. So yeah,
yeah,
that outcast feeling is very real. And I think a lot
yeah.
of people can relate to that. Even if you have your small group, there's dynamics, right? There's
Yeah, for
a
sure.
thing.
And I had teenagers once too. My kids, it wasn't that long ago. It doesn't seem that they were in high school, and I watched all of those dynamics with them, and saw how they, navigated that world. And it's a high pressure sort of
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah. Yeah, and for teenagers in this day and age too, not that we can't relate, but it's
Right.
really a thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
do it.
So, yeah, so, I wanted her to be able to, to see these other kids or see something that they weren't. But, really it was her imagination. She thought they look so beautiful. They must be the popular kids, I really want to fit in with them. So her desire to fit in with these neighbor kids at their summer home is is overwhelming to her. She just really, really wants to be part of that group to fit in.
Yeah. And I want to kind of dive in there for a minute because that was another thing that I was feeling when I read it is that so many of these characters are marked by longing. And I know it's not unusual. I mean, all of our characters have to have motivation or they wouldn't do anything. I mean, nothing's worse than a character who doesn't really get out there and fight for the thing they want. But I would put this in the category of almost a painful longing for a different identity, for acceptance, for to be seen. And I don't know if
Yeah.
you want to get into that at all, but I do feel like it's done really well for all your characters.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I mean, I guess you're right. And I didn't really even see it that way until you said that. But you're right. For Daphne, that wanting to have friends to fit in. And then there's the two other points of view. Lara is another teenager, and she really just wants her family to love her. So she's constantly seeking attention, and not always the best kind of attention.
Mm.
Yeah. And then
Well,
the
it makes
other,
you feel for them.
yeah, yeah. And I feel like I've known people like that
Yeah.
too. Just
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and then the other character is Mark, who is more of a young adult, and he has a lot of reasons for wanting to fit in because
Yeah.
he's just come out of prison.
Yeah. Yeah. He wants to like leave that old self behind and be reinvented in some way. And I think that's something we all kind of want at some different points in our lives, right?
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
static. None of our lives are static. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I really like the way that you've developed these characters like that. Um, can I jump back to the paranormal aspects for a second because they're done so well? And I just want to ask, uh, how do you kind of measure her paranormal responses with her emotional? Because as you're writing your characters, you're kind of following, letting them take the lead and letting their emotions kind of shape what happens next. But like, how do you kind of pair that with the paranormal experience? How does that inform Daphne's life? And I don't know how much you want to say, but how does it guide, motivate her? How does it motivate her?
Um, well, because of what happened before with the friend that turned everyone against her, Daphne's trying to push aside that side of herself that feels premonitions, that kind of knows people. And her psychic ability it comes on strongest when she touches another person. So by holding hands or even, you know, touching their skin someplace, that's when she really gets these images. And she wait, what was the question?
But I'm kind of like curious about how it shapes the character because when we want to avoid something we don't like, it can inform our actions. And I feel like
Right.
Daphne sometimes does not welcome this intrusive, right? Paranormal
Yes.
that she
She
has.
doesn't. She's trying to hide it. And even when she does have these feelings about her new friends, she doesn't want to tell them. She won't tell them because she doesn't want them to, ostracize her again.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, her bigger motivation for not doing that. The other thing I want to say about the paranormal stuff, because there's a lot of books about, psychics and
Sure. Yeah.
paranormal things, or magical realism is a genre. And I don't feel like this fits into any of that. I tried
No.
to make these experiences that she has um, like feel really natural. Just like if you or I suddenly had a feeling that, something happened to one of our kids or something like that, it's that kind of instinctual, sense that you have every now and
Yeah.
then.
You took it to another level. Like you took
Well,
something
for
that's
sure.
familiar and then took it to another level, as opposed to the literary tradition of magical realism which is like, this is the way the world looks, accept it, which has it just has a different sort of feel, you know,
Right.
you're reading Marquez or, I guess he's the, one we think of most. But
Yeah.
I think that this is nice too because that little bit of realism makes it relatable. Even like you're you're not gonna. I don't relate to the kid in the Sixth Sense. I don't.
But
Although
that's one of my comps too.
well, I mean, look, I love that movie. I think it's great. Um,
Yeah.
but I don't identify with him, and I think that Daphne has that sort of realism that's so beautiful in his depiction, right? Because he
Yeah.
has very relatable responses. But to say like, yeah, the hair raising on the back of your neck or just kind of a feeling about someone
Yeah.
that's more relatable than, someone's visage like showing up in a building. And I think that
Right.
makes it like you get drawn into the book and you're like, I'm all on board with Daphne. And it just creates a connection that I think is quite nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that part of the book and I recommend it. Um, so I'm going to kind of lean into that familiarity and that realism for a second, right? So you have this paranormal aspects in a book that otherwise can be familiar because you're at a lake house. Come on, we've all been there. We all have gone. My family went on vacation to lake houses and we lived on a lake for a while. So that kind
Cool.
of trope like feels great. Like it's familiar. It in a world that's otherwise very different for Daphne, that's a familiar rock that we can kind of go to. So I'm just gonna ask you like how it did not feel like it did not feel been there, done that. It felt fresh. So how did you kind of take your personal experiences but still make it fresh? Like how did you can you say more about that? It,
The funny thing is, it doesn't feel that fresh to me because I grew up on a lake house too. Specifically, I grew up on the lake house that's in this book. Um, and the name of the town has been changed and the name of the lake and all of that. But we did live in this old Victorian, or we didn't live there, but we summered there. And it was in our family. So that felt like so natural for me to have Daphne on this lake,
okay.
and I've always loved that house. So it brings up a lot of memories for
So
me,
that's some
writing
nostalgia.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay, so that kind of does segue to me, like how important is setting to you as a whole? Like when you're conceiving of a book, you're like, I really have to connect with the setting and I need the reader to too. Is it an
yeah,
important aspect for you?
absolutely. I feel like the setting it should be like another character in the book. Um, it should sort of mirror what's going on in the book as well. I kind of like to use weather occasionally too to
Yeah,
really convey
right.
stronger emotions or whatever. And I just feel like it's one of the more important um, things, aspects of a novel to have, to have your setting. Um, so like for example, I don't think this book would have worked as well, like, I don't know, like at a beach on the Gulf or something, like maybe it would have, but I don't know.
No, it has that very nostalgic feeling that I think only this setting can do.
Yeah,
And it also is atmospheric because it has sort of the creepiness of it. I'm sorry, like lake houses can be quite creepy. You got Sleepaway Camp. Come on, it was a whole genre of horror movies. And so
yeah,
we kind of like we're used to those embedded in our minds in a great way, I think, of
yeah,
Jason and we know it's back there. Even if
yeah.
we're not making a direct comparison, it still lives in our psyche, especially if you are a Gen Xer, like yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a story. This is actually a true ghost story and one of the inspirations for this book. Um, so the lake house that we went to in the summers, it belonged to my grandmother, and her mother bought it shortly after World War II, um, which is where my grandfather was killed. He was killed in the war. He was on the Comfort. He was a doctor on the medical ship, and it was kamikazed.
Oh my God.
So, yeah. So, and my mom and her sister were really little at the
Yeah.
time. They were like 2 and 4 or something like that. And my great grandmother bought this house to have a sort of getaway, a comfortable place
Yeah.
for my grandmother and the girls to come stay and, grieve and,
Yeah.
get
Have a
away from things for a little while.
rest.
So my grandmother told me that um, when they were staying there after he died, he would come into the living room and try just talk to her. And they would have these
Oh,
conversations.
there's this sweetness about
And
this, right? Like the average
yes,
person would be like, "Oh my God," but it's sweet, right? At the same
but
time.
he died so suddenly too. And then you wonder, really, and what
Yeah.
happens to our soul or whatever when something like that happens. So he kept coming and talking to her, and it was so painful and hard for her. She finally had to tell him, you, you have to stop. This is just so hard on me.
Yeah.
And after that, he moved on. So that was kind
I
of
mean,
another
closure
piece
there,
of
right?
inspiration for the
Yeah,
book.
sure. I can see it. I can definitely see it in the full narrative. And that has that nice familial like connection there that comes out in the book as well. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Okay, well, just so I don't keep us too long, I kind of want to lead us into a little bit more of the publishing side.
Okay.
So yeah, you chose to indie publish this as opposed to the traditional. I mean, you've been traditionally published and then you made a switch. Can you say
Yes.
a little bit more about what that experience was like?
It has been so empowering. Um, I pitched this book to agents and editors for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And at every, suggestion and everything, I talked to editors halfway through the process and I rewrote it again. I had a big time agent give me a revise and resubmit. So I tried to work with her guidelines to see if I could make this book, you know, be, that marketable book that agents want and that publishers want. So, I really jumped through hoops with it a lot. I know that it is the best possible book that I could have written. Um, and it was this close. And
Yeah.
after all of that time and all the rejection, I had to make the decision, do I want to pitch this book for another year? I'm not getting any younger.
Right. Next
So,
star.
and I was kind of ready to move on with it.
Yeah.
So it's been great. I've also recently gotten the rights back for Best Kept Secrets, my debut book, and now that's available in paperback. And that is so amazing because my publisher was never going to release it that way. It was a hardcover and ebook, and that was it for them. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
I can see how that's empowering. And then, you could get it into a more accessible version for Best
right.
Secrets. Yeah. I mean, also a great book. Buying hardcover is a different kind of commitment and it's important. I mean, hardcover is important, but yeah, I'm
Yeah.
glad I got it in paperback too.
Yeah. Yeah. So the process has been really great.
But tons of hard work.
It is that. And the one thing that I would say to anybody who wants to go indie is be patient with yourself and give yourself time to learn the ins and outs of it, meet indie authors, ask questions,
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, build community, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
Building community,
absolutely.
kind of connect you with people who can give you advice or connect you with editors that you want to use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And editing is, that is going to always be my biggest expense. And I know other authors who don't, not that they don't edit, but that it's not their biggest expense
Yeah.
necessarily.
Yeah.
But I'm not that confident.
Me either. Well, you're always like, I think you look at it, and you go, it can be better. There's something
You
about it
can.
better. And I think, you
You
know,
can't always see that in your own book.
can't. No, sometimes you need someone else to kind of show you the way or just to say, oh, this is the impression I got. And
Right.
the advice that I've been given with editorial work, and I agree with this, is if the editorial suggestions resonate with you, then you know that that's the right editor for you, right?
Yeah.
If you can envision a change and say, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I completely see that.
Yeah.
It's a good moment.
Exactly. Yeah, but have a strong community. And one of the best things about this writing community is that everybody really is so generous with their advice and suggestions. Take what fits for you, obviously,
Mhm.
but you have it. There's a lot to do as an indie author, a lot
A lot.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you are your own business owner, you are your own.
Yeah. And you're going to do all of your own marketing and promo, unless and that's something you can decide to hire out.
Yeah.
I kind of thinking about getting a publicist, but maybe not for this book, maybe
Yeah.
in the
Well, I think
future.
even people that go small publisher get publicists. If you're
Yeah.
not with one of the big five, then yeah.
Yeah.
And there are a lot, if you're in a tight community, they will make recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's land on the most important piece of information. Where can viewers find your book?
Um, they can find it on Amazon. It should be available in since we're recording this a little bit early and it's not quite out there yet, it will be available through Ingram, through bookstores. Hopefully, you should be able to order it from bookshop.org from your favorite bookseller. And, the big box that we love to hate.
True enough. All right. Well, this was a great interview. I really
Yeah,
liked talking with you and hearing about this excellent book. And I think that I hope people pick it up because it's really good.
thank you so much
Yeah.
for talking with me today.
Yeah, and I just want to thank readers for checking it out and giving us a listen and seeing about Tracy's new book.
Thanks.
Thanks.